Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Alejandra, and today I want to show you how to start working with pivot tables. I have received several requests on this topic, so I hope that this video will help you to learn what a pivot table is and to practice. And without further ado, let's start. Pivot tables are a great way to summarize, calculate, and analyze data. For example, here I have a report where I have dates, provinces, cities, and I have sales. For me, it's very hard to tell what is the total of sales, let's say for Vancouver or even by province for Alberta. It's very hard to do that just by looking at the data, right? So pivot tables are great for us to summarize all this information in a very quick and easy way. Here I have a range of data. So inside of that range, I'm just going to go to insert pivot table and I have several options here. I'm using Microsoft 365 and I have from table range. In my case, that is a range that will be the option that I will select. But I also have the option to bring information from external source. And in this case, the data model is grayed out because we don't have anything there. And also I can bring information from Power BI. Let me click at table range. In this tutorial, we are looking into the basics of pivot table. So let's bring that right now. Here, this box is gonna ask me to select the table or range. Excel has recognized the range and brought it for me. It goes from cell B4 to cell E105, which is correct. But if that range was selected wrongly, then I could just click at this arrow up, and as the range is selected, I can just click inside of my worksheet and start selecting the range that I want to bring to the pivot table. In my case, it was correct as I said. I'm just gonna select it again and I'm gonna just press enter. That is my range. Anything that goes below this, any information that we add is not going to be added automatically to my pivot table. For that reason, I recommend that you work with tables instead of ranges, but I will show you how to do that shortly. Also here, Excel is asking me where I want to place that pivot table. And I strongly recommend that you place the pivot tables in new worksheets. Because if you place the pivot table in the same sheet where your data source is, if the pivot table or the data source need to grow, there might not be room enough to do so. Also, if you create several pivot tables, you create each pivot table in their own worksheet. Okay, if I wanted to create a pivot table in the existing worksheet, I would just click here to that option, click at the location and select the cell. But as I said, I don't recommend it. So I strongly recommend that you leave the new worksheet. And in our case, we don't want to send this information to the data model. We are not going to analyze with multiple tables. So I'm going to remove that check mark. And I'm going to say, okay. Now I have a pivot table that Excel has created for me. It's empty, but it's created for me to start working with. And here also Excel created two tabs. One is called Pivot Table Analyze, and the other one is called Design. The Pivot Table Analyze has several options, but this is a very short video, so I'm gonna just show you those that we're gonna be working with today. So here is where I can provide the name for this pivot table. In my case, it will be demo pivot table. No, right? It doesn't have spaces, but I can see that there are three different words there. And that is the name of my pivot table. And you can see that is also inside of this little box, but you cannot change it here. You will need to change it through here. Even though the pivot table has been located on cell A3, I can insert a column beside that. So I'm going to select column A and press Ctrl plus to add the column. So I have visually, it just looks better for me. And you see that every time that I go inside of this pivot table, my pivot table fields comes over here. And every time that I leave the pivot table, the pivot table fields goes away. So just keep that in mind. And for default, let me get this back. For default, you have this layout. I don't like this layout because here I can see the names of my columns. So there are times that I have so many names that I need to be scrolling down quite a bit to find or to see all my columns. So in that case, I can use the search bar and start typing the name of the column that I'm looking for. In my case, the column province contains PR. But there are times that I have, as I said, too many names that is very handy to have that, but still I don't find it as useful. So I usually change the layout to here where you see this year. I click there and I change it for this layout. I just find it easier. And let's say I want to bring the dates to my pivot table, but I don't want to bring the whole date. I just want to bring the month. As I mentioned, I'm using Microsoft 365. So when I bring the date field to any of these boxes over here, Excel will create two groups. So I'm going to click there to the box to get a check mark inside there, or I can just drag that date into the rows, and Excel created days and months. And in my case, it's very handy because I want to get the months only. So if I expand this plus here, I'm going to just zoom in a little bit, and you can see that I have the days, and then I will have the full date, and I don't want that. So I can just keep clicking at the plus to expand, and I would need to do the same to collapse. I would need to click at every single minus and they start collapsing. Or I can go to January here, right click, expand collapse, and I can collapse entire field. And now I'm back to seeing the months, but I know that the full dates and the days are there. So I can just remove them from the pivot table, and I can remove them in several ways. Let's say I want to remove the days. I can just click at the check mark on the left, and then that is gone. You don't see it here anymore when it says rows. And now I want to remove the date. I just want to keep the month. I can click where it says date and remove field, or I can just drag that to the worksheet, and you can see that there is an X right there. That means that it's going to be eliminated, and that's it. It has been removed, right? So now I have the months on the rows, but I don't want them on the rows. I want them as the column names. Well, with the pivot tables, it's so easy to manipulate this information. I can just drag from the rows field to the columns field, drag it and release it there. And now you can see that my months are the titles of my columns, which is fantastic. Now I can bring the province to the rows. If I click at the box on the left, Excel brought them to the rows properly. But if I wanted to bring it to another field, I would do the same. I would just drag that to the field, to that field. So let's say I have my provinces here. I want to bring the city below the provinces. Or if I wanted to bring the city on top of the province, I can do that as well. Now we have the city and the province, the city and the province. Or I can move it back to below province. And then, okay, that's what I wanted to do. So it's so easy to change information with this pivot table, right? And now I can bring the sales. I click there, and now I can see that the sales came here to the values field. And I can change the number format. I can select any of the numbers here, right click, number format, and I'm going to change to number, use thousand separators, and I don't want to use the decimals. I press OK, and I have the number formatting, which I find very useful. Let's say I don't like this layout for the pivot table. I can go to my tab design, and I can go to report layout and change it for show in tabular form. By doing that, now I have one column for the province, one column for the city, which is my preference to have this information separated. And you can see here that I have subtotals. This is Alberta total, British Columbia total. If I didn't want these subtotals here, I can right click anywhere inside of this column. And I can click at subtotal province, and it's gone. If I want to bring it back, I can right click again and now select subtotal province to bring back that check mark there. Or you can also go here to the design tab and click up subtotals. Here is where you can select do not show subtotals or go back to subtotals and say show all subtotals at the bottom or at the top of the group. At the bottom of the group is fine for me. And also we have the grand total, sorry. And same thing, you can remove the grand total by right-clicking there and remove grand total, or you can remove the grand total from here. It says off for rows and columns, on for rows and columns, or on for rows only or for columns only. At the end, the pivot table also calculated the grand total per row. And let's say if I want to remove the pivot table fields, I can just click at this X and it's gone. If you want to bring it back, you can go to pivot table analyze. And here on the show group, you can click at the field list and it's back. Or let me remove it again. Or inside of the pivot table, you can select show field list and there is back, right? So I'm going to remove it right now so you can see how easy and how fast the information has been populated and grouped. Let's say you can also filter if you don't want to bring all the provinces or you don't want to bring all the cities, or you can filter by month. Also, you can, let's bring back the field list here. I'm going to bring it from here this time. Let's say I want to filter this information by province. I can also bring that to the filter. Now the provinces are gone from inside of my pivot table because I'm going to filter from here. I'm going to click here and select only the province that I want to analyze. If I want to select several provinces, so I'm going to click here to select multiple items. And I'm going to remove the check mark from all. And I'm going to bring, let's say, British Columbia and Saskatchewan. I'm going to say, okay. And now I have the information only for those two provinces, which is very handy, right? Let's say I want to remove the field. I don't want to fill this information anymore. So I just remove the province, or I could also bring the province to the rows again, and then the filter on the top should have been removed. So this is a very, very simple example how you can start creating your pivot tables, how to work with them. I mentioned earlier that because we're working with ranges, any additional information to this range is not going to be automatically added to the pivot table. If I want to add information to my data source and I want that information to be added to my pivot table, I will need to add that information to my data source, then go to pivot table analyze, change data source, and I will need to expand that range, including that new information. So that is not ideal. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to convert this range into a table. Inside of my range, I'm going to press Control T. Here, I'm going to create a table, and my table has headers. If Excel didn't recognize that your table has headers, and it brings this information without the check mark, you just add the check mark. So I'm going to say, okay, now this has been converted into a table. And the wonderful thing about the tables is I'm going to select the additional information that goes from cell 3 to cell 51. So I'm going to Control C this. And I'm going to paste at the end of my table right here. I'm going to Control V to paste, and automatically this information has been added to my table. And you can see that because at the end of the table, there is a little triangle. That means that that is the end of the table. Now, if I go to sheet 3, right click and refresh, now you see that the numbers change just like that. So this is excellent, a great tool. I'm an accountant and I use pivot tables all the time. I hope you found this information useful. If you like it and if you want more information related to pivot tables, please let me know in the comments so I can prepare other videos on this topic. Also, if you like it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the new content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.